Before we actually get into the topics, I want to play a snippet of this audiobook that I'm reading from y'all because they're about to start talking about how society takes on the opinions and mentality of an abusive personality. Y'all, this book is so good. Okay, I told y'all about it last night on Old Ladies First panel. Shout out to Jamie and Nisi. We had a great time. Our last show of the year. Y'all won't see us again until January 15th. But this book here, Why Does He Do That? Came out in 2011 by Lundy Bancroft. Somebody on TikTok was talking about it. And I was like, oh, girl, let me go read that. And really, it's just to compare and contrast um, some of my own experiences, things I've seen. You know what I mean? It's just to make the connections, right? Really good book. So I want to play just a little bit.
The abuser will retaliate against her for talking about his behavior to other people.
We're about to get into it.
It does mean telling the abused woman privately that you don't like the way he's treating her and that she doesn't deserve it, no matter what she has done. And if you see or hear violence or threats, it means calling the police. How society adopts the abuser's perspective. Almost anyone can become an ally of an abusive man by inadvertently adopting his perspective. People usually don't even notice that they're supporting abusive thinking, or they wouldn't do it. Let's examine some of the most common forms of accidental support. The person who says to the abused woman, "You should show him some compassion, even if he has done bad things. Don't forget that he's a human being too." I have almost never worked with an abused woman who overlooked her partner's humanity. The problem is the reverse. He forgets her humanity. Acknowledging his abusiveness and speaking forcefully and honestly about how he has hurt her is indispensable to her recovery. It is the abuser's perspective that she is being mean to him by speaking bluntly about the damage he has done. To suggest to her that his need for compassion should come before her right to live free from abuse is consistent with the abuser's outlook. I have repeatedly seen the tendency among friends and acquaintances of an abused woman to feel that it is their responsibility to make sure that she realizes what a good person he really is inside. In other words, to stay focused on his needs rather than on her own, which is a mistake. People who wish to help an abused woman should instead be telling her what a good person she is. The person who says to her, "But he's the father of your children." The abusive man uses the children to entrap the woman in the relationship, saying that she is depriving them of a father by splitting up the family. That he is the one who is keeping those children from having the father they need by forcing them to grow up with a father who abuses their mother. Children need an abuse-free home. The person who says to her, "You made a commitment and now you need to stick with it through hard times." The abusive man believes that chronic mistreatment, overt disrespect, intimidation, and even violence are not good enough reasons for a woman to want to stay away from a man. When people say to her, "You made your bed, now lie in it," they are supporting the abuser's value system. The person who says to her, "You are claiming to be a helpless victim." If the abuser could hear these words being spoken to his partner, he would jump for joy. He may have said the very same thing to her. The abuser's perspective is that the woman exaggerates the hurtfulness of his conduct because she wants the status of victim, attributing to her the maneuvers that he is actually fond of using himself. When an abused woman tries to tell you how bad things are, listen. The person who says, "These abuse activists are anti-male." How is it anti-male to be against abuse? Are we supposed to pretend we don't notice that the overwhelming majority of abusers are male? This accusation parallels the abuser's words to his partner. "The reason you think I'm abusive is because you have a problem with men." One of the best counters to this piece of sidetracking is to point out how many men are active in combating the abuse of women. Remember also that abused women are the sisters, daughters, mothers, and friends of men. Men's lives are affected by abuse because it happens to women we know and care about. I've given just a few of the dozens of examples I've encountered of how people take on the abuser's view of his abuse. When you hear these kinds of statements, draw the speaker's attention to the fact that he or she is making the abuser's arguments for him. Most people don't want to carry his banner and will drop it quickly once you show them what is in their hands. It is impossible for a community to stop abuse while continuing to assist or ignore abusers at the same time. Protecting or enabling an abuser is as morally repugnant as the abuse itself. This critical concept needs to become firmly embedded in our culture. Colluding with abuse abandons the abused woman and her children, and ultimately abandons the abuser as well, since it keeps him from ever dealing with his problem. In particular, we have to bring to light the actions of those powerful, well-trained professionals who choose to join the abuser in his goals and tactics. If we can erode the ability of abusers to gain allies, they will stand alone, and alone, they are easier to stop.
So that's just a little bit from Lundy Bancroft's book, Why Does He Do That? And it's really extensive. I want to get a hard copy of it. It's fascinating. Fascinating. Okay. Hey, Diva, refer to all of the male celebrities accused for violent acts against women like clockwork. The abused people are blamed and everyone sympathizes with the violent man. Girl, rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. They do the same thing over and over and over again. Just like, last night in the live when we were talking about different forms of abuse, and everybody wants to get all in a tizzy in the comments because y'all really don't like people to call things abuse. You like for them to call it something else. Like somebody was in the comments and kept saying, I mean, I feel like it's not abuse, it's bullying, but it's not abuse. And I'm like, hey, babe, those two things are the same thing. Hey, babe, I don't know if you know. Those two things are the same thing. And I think it's important because it's not even just like it just makes you realize how many times people be playing on your top. It just makes you realize how many times people be playing on your top. And as a person that has had quite a few abusive experiences in my life, I've started to like clock the feel of it. But you don't always know exactly what words to use. And so, you read books. You read books and you find out even more about what's really happening and all of this. That's why it's so annoying for me when people automatically go to that bullshit statement that they like to use. Oh, she's not innocent. That's y'all favorite thing to say when y'all don't like that we're accusing somebody of abuse. Y'all love to say that shit. Oh my God. Like, and it's like a person does not have to be perfect in order for them to be the victim of a crime. And if we're talking about the mistreatment of a person, you're saying they're not innocent. Yes, they are, because we're talking about a perpetration against them. Like, it's really weird when y'all do that, when y'all flip it. If somebody stole something from a person, you wouldn't turn around and be like, bitch, you stole that from yourself. Okay. You took a part in somebody stealing from you, girl. That's not how that would go. So it's very weird um the way people respond. You know what I'm saying? To these conversations. Like it's an automatic anger and vitriol towards whoever the victim is. Which is why I said what I said yesterday about Travis Hunter and his little girlfriend. Does the book help you with getting someone to realize that? Yes, it does. It does, because it points out and then it uses actual examples. So the book is written by a man that was actually in charge of a counseling program for people who were abusive or batterers. So if they had a court situation, the court will appoint them to go through his program. And that's how he was able to get a lot of the information that he's gotten, is because he's been in trusted circles with abusive men where they've spoke freely. And a lot of the times they are so emboldened by society, by whoever, whoever they are, their socialization, they are emboldened by the society around them, that their behavior is fine because they're male, right? So they talk about it amongst the certain psychiatrists like this man, or therapists, whatever. They talk to him about it in a way where they're being 100% honest, because they don't even see that something's wrong with it. And I tell y'all that all the time. People like Tyrese, Martell Holt. That was another thing. I especially was thinking about Martell and Melody, because they talked about the court system and how men, and I've told y'all this because I've seen it with my own eyes. So then when I actually read it in this book and hear how common it is for men to use the criminal justice system or the court system against women, or to control women so he can have, know where she is and what she's doing, using the children to control the woman, threatening the children, doing like he talked about a story where a man wanted to punish his wife for something. So he gave his baby a spoiled bottle. The milk was spoiled. He knew it and he still gave it to the baby to punish her. Baby was sick, throwing up and everything. 11-month-old. Another one was a man who would never hit a woman. And that's another thing. He talks about psychological abuse. And y'all, I'm telling you, even I felt like there was one portion where he was reading my fucking daddy down, bro. He was reading my nigga down in this book. Because like the ones that actually show up in a certain capacity, is so hard to prove to other people that they are abusive because of the way they show up in the world. And it can be so difficult. And it reminded me of being at my dad's funeral. Like, the way people will then speak about him, it almost shows such a contrast to what you've experienced that it's like alarming. It was crazy. Like, also how the relationship between you and your mom, oh my God, talking about how you eventually get mad at the one that's being abused because you start to feel like, why are you letting them do this to you? And then you start to adopt the mentality of the abuser, seeing the abuse, like, for instance, me starting to see my mom through my father's lens at some point. I have to check myself about that shit now. Like, I have to be conscious of the fact that I sometimes look at my mom through this demeaning lens because I am taking on what I was taught by my father. My father demeaned her a lot of the time, like verbally. And so what ends up happening is, even though I was fighting on her behalf, and I'm still like I'm seeing it for what it is, but it shaped how I think about women and how I view their weaknesses, and how I judge them for their own abuse. I know that I myself have this issue. So that's why I know what everybody else is fucking doing when we talk about these things on social media. But that specific thing, it's hard to recognize that it's happening. They talked about it from the standpoint of when the abusive parent and and the parent that's being abused break up, and how it eventually causes issues. But I'm like, it was him dying. That was another thing that caused the issue, because then it cemented him in a certain capacity in her mind. You know what I mean? So like, after he's gone and all you have are your good memories for the most part, but you still have your automatic responses that are cued to your abuse. Oh my God. It's crazy how much of that shit becomes subconscious. And it reminds me, once again, even when he's talking about certain things, it reminds me of that Jonathan Majors conversation that we would have. Whenever we was talking about Jonathan Majors and that white girl running behind him, and everybody feeling like there's no way he was abusing her if she was running behind him. And I'm like, I don't know why y'all keep saying that. I don't know why y'all actually think that, because I don't know how many times you've seen in old movies, especially like black exploitation films. Oh my God, of the 70s, you would see so many like examples of men abusing women and women running behind those men. I remember one movie where the girl was like on drugs and the nigga was beating her, and he was like, crawl. And she crawled across the table. It was terrible. Sparkle. Sparkle. One of my favorite movies growing up. Sister was getting her ass beat by that man. Went from being this strong, sassy personality to doing whatever that nigga wanted her to do, to the point that now she on drugs, which was another abusive tactic to get her on drugs so that you could control her that way. And that's why when we talk about the Diddy shit, I feel like, you really have to start to notice and look at how the person is showing up, what they're doing. And I feel like I'm getting really, really good at peeping manipulation. Not even that I wasn't always good at it, but even more so now, because I seek out books and, just even the TikTok shit. Like, just you seek the information that really gives you a clearer picture, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. That's why I try not to get too mad at people about some of this shit, because I know their responses are from this bottom level of not really understanding it and still being in it and still wanting to protect. And that's a part of, like, those are obviously ramifications of abuse. When y'all feel the need to protect abusers, like, it is that, yeah. And so that's why I feel like I'm going to consistently call shit out. I'm going to call it how I see it. If I'm wrong, that's fine. I'll accept being wrong. I don't need to be right all the time. But I feel like in it large, we ignore how regular abuse in abusive relationships, and y'all call them now, y'all call them toxic. That's what y'all call them now. To act as if the psychological and emotional and verbal, shit is not abuse, because you don't want to call it that. You would just rather call it toxic. And it also talks about how a lot of women are acting out in response to abuse, but they've been made to look crazy to everybody, and that's a tactic. And it was the same thing, again. And I hate to say it like this, but it makes me think about Safari and Erica Mena. We all know Erica Mena is crazy, but I also feel like he's taking advantage and using that fact in order to be able to get away with the things he does to her in their relationship. You can rely on the fact that people have already, labeled her as a crazy colorist bitch. You know what I'm saying? Um, and cheating is abuse. Yes, repeated cheating is abuse. Okay. And y'all don't see that either. You know what I mean? So it because like think about the emotional cycle you go on. And that's another thing that you have to start to recognize what it feels like. What it actually feels like to go on that cycle of abuse with people. And it's so innate to me. I could like, and because I'm not in an abusive relationship in my marriage, I feel like it was easy for me to kind of forget certain aspects of it. You know what I'm saying? Like you just forget like how certain things used to feel. But certain things like have triggered a lot of like memories to come back to me and a lot of old feelings. And then I'm thinking about how that related in my relationships and even some of my friendships. And I think when you are a certain type of empathetic personality, you naturally attract people who are looking to abuse that fact. And it, you know what I mean? Like it is what it is. I feel like on some level, it seems like a lot of empathetic people attract narcissistic personalities. And I feel like I was always kind of seeing my mom in that lens, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like when I got older, I kind of started to see my dad's perspective a little bit more because I'm getting colder, right? I'm kind of like shutting things off in some emotional way. And, that's why I like to continue to take in information because sometimes information can enlighten. That's what's supposed to do. And I feel like that enlightened me. that definitely enlightened, because I don't want to be like that. I was raised by an abusive personality, somebody that was mentally, verbally, and physically and emotionally abusive. And so once you are raised in that, you kind of adopt certain things that you were taught, that you watched. It is what it is. So I'm also being very like conscious to like not allow those things to seep through in me. Feel me? So yeah, very good book, y'all. Like just something to read. If you've ever had abusive relationships, like or had an abusive parent, it also talks about the being the child of an abusive parent. It also taught y'all peep game. So do y'all? I don't know if a lot of y'all have heard about Freud and how Freud had this whole Oedipus complex thing. And I think we've seen it like with some black men in the relationships they have with their mother, like that what is it, covert incest, but it actually kind of dispels that when it comes to certain things. So like back in the day, Freud talked to a lot of young women that express being molested by their fathers because he received so much pressure from his peers not to report it that way. He changed it and made it seem like all of these teenage girls secretly had sexual fantasies about their fathers. So when they had that whole thing with Freud and him kind of putting it on young women that they wanted sex with their fathers, instead of like, no, the fathers are dirty ass men. And a lot of the times men view sex animalistically. So they don't even, I feel like a lot of times see how detrimental it is to do that to your kids, your daughters, whatever. Like, I'm just saying, like, and it seemed like it was more people than they actually want to admit. Just like motherfuckers that's oppressing gayness and all of that. It's way more motherfuckers than you would actually want to admit. That's why when it comes to certain people like Ken over there, oh, I'm a new father and all of that shit. Vince McMahon. It's a lot of different aspects of that you have to be very, very careful of. Shit. Even sometimes I wonder about Lisa Ray's daddy because they act like it was only mentally and emotional, that triangulation that was created. But it is you having an incestuous relationship with your daughter if she feels like she's in competition with the women you're having sexual relationships with. So yeah, y'all. And it's not, like the man said, it's not because, oh, I hate men. No, because I do feel like women have these same attributes. A lot of my abusive relationships have been with women, but also with masculine women or women, that are perpetrating a certain image that they've learned from where? From men. Okay. Yes, Diddy and his incestuous relationship with his mom. Yeah, it's a lot of weird shit that be going on, but you have to talk about it. Like, you have to talk about it. You have to break things apart because you got to be able to see what's going on. I'm just saying. That's me. I want to know why. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Um uh oh, I don't know what that comment meant. Okay. I'm going through y'all comments. All right. Thank you, J Ray, for the super chat. You were 100% right, Bonnie. That's a common thing that abuse victims often take on those tactics to use on others, like the kids or fan friends eventually. Yes. Yes, absolutely.